The message arrived on a Tuesday morning when the sun was just rising over New York City. Every screen on Earth flickered at the same moment. Every phone buzzed. Every television switched channels on its own. Then a face appeared that no human had ever seen before. Ambassador Zethral of the Velthari Dominion had silver scales covering his entire face. His eyes were deep black with no white in them at all. When he spoke, his voice was cold and carried no emotion. Species designation human. Your solar system has been incorporated into Galactic Council jurisdiction. You will surrender all military assets. You will dismantle your orbital defense network. You will submit to Protectorate status within 30 standard rotations. Compliance is not optional. The transmission ended as suddenly as it had begun. For a few seconds, the entire planet was silent. Then the chaos started in the United Nations Emergency Chamber. Secretary General Linda Patterson stood frozen in front of the massive screen. She was a tall woman in her early 60s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had spent 30 years in diplomacy and had faced down dictators and terrorists. But nothing had prepared her for this. Around her, representatives from every nation on Earth were shouting into their phones. Some were crying. Others sat in stunned silence with their mouths hanging open. The room smelled of fear and old coffee. "Everyone please calm down," Linda said. But her voice was lost in the noise. Admiral Kevin Brooks pushed through the crowd toward her. He was a broad man with a shaved head and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He had commanded Earth's Space Defense Initiative since its creation 5 years ago. His uniform was wrinkled because he had rushed here from a meeting on the other side of the city. "Madam Secretary." "We need to talk privately," he said in a low voice. Linda nodded and led him to a small room behind the main chamber. Dr. Nathan Cole followed them without being invited. Nathan was thin and pale with thick glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. He was Earth's leading expert on alien cultures. Though until 8 years ago that field had not existed. Linda closed the door, and the noise from outside became muffled. She leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. "Tell me this is some kind of mistake," she said. "It is not a mistake," Nathan replied. He was already looking at data on his tablet. "I have been studying Council communications since our first contact with the Meridian traders. This is exactly how they operate. They find a new species. They make demands. The species either submits or faces consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Kevin asked. Nathan looked up from his tablet. His face was very pale. "I do not know. Every species in the records either submitted or simply disappeared. There are no accounts of successful resistance." Kevin slammed his fist against the wall. "They cannot do this. We have rights. We have sovereignty." "They do not care about our rights," Nathan said quietly. "To them, we are primitives who accidentally discovered faster-than-light travel. They see us the same way we might see ants building a hill near a highway. Interesting, perhaps, but ultimately insignificant." Linda straightened up and walked to the small window. Outside, she could see the city streets filling with people. Some were running. Some were hugging each other. Some were on their knees praying. The whole world was learning what she had just learned. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and the universe was not friendly. "What do they want exactly?" she asked without turning around. Nathan scrolled through his tablet. "Complete military disarmament. All ships surrendered to Council control. All orbital weapons platforms dismantled. We would be assigned a Council administrator who would oversee our transition to Protectorate status. In exchange, we receive protection from unspecified threats and access to Council trade networks. Trade networks that would make us a resource colony," Kevin added bitterly. "I have seen the agreements they forced on the Meridians. They take everything of value and give back scraps." Linda turned to face them. Her eyes were hard now, and the fear was fading. In its place was something else. Something that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and world wars. "How long do we have?" 30 rotations is approximately 40 Earth days, Nathan said. "In our current military strength," Kevin pulled out his own tablet. 47 warships of various classes. 200 orbital defense platforms. The Aegis shield network is 60% complete. Against how many council ships? Kevin hesitated before answering. Intelligence estimates suggest the Council commands over 50,000 vessels across 12 member species. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. 47 against 50,000. It was not even a real fight. It was an execution. But Linda did not look defeated. She looked thoughtful. Nathan, you said every species either submitted or disappeared, but you also mentioned something else earlier this week. Something about the Council being nervous about us. Nathan nodded slowly. Yes, I have noticed it in their communications. Whenever humans are mentioned, there is an undertone of anxiety. They move to claim us faster than any species in recorded history. Usually, they observe new civilizations for decades before making contact. With us, they waited only 8 years. Why? Linda asked. I have theories, but no proof. Nathan took off his glasses and cleaned them on his shirt. Our technology is crude compared to theirs in most areas. But our development speed is unprecedented. 8 years ago, we had no space fleet at all. Now we have 47 ships. That kind of growth frightens them. Kevin leaned forward with sudden interest. You think they are trying to contain us before we become a real threat? I think they have seen something like us before, Nathan said. And whatever happened then scared them badly enough that they developed an entire system for dealing with emerging species. Submit or disappear. No middle ground. No negotiation. Linda walked to the center of the room and stood there with her hands clasped behind her back. She was quiet for a long moment as she processed everything she had heard. We cannot fight them directly, she said finally. Not yet. But we can delay. We can negotiate. We can ask questions they do not want to answer. By time, Kevin said with understanding dawning in his eyes, time to build more ships. Time to finish the Aegis network. Time to find out what they are really afraid of, Linda added. She looked at both men with fierce determination. Humanity has faced extinction before. Ice ages. Asteroids. We survived because we adapted. Because we refused to give up. She walked to the door and paused with her hand on the handle. Gentlemen, we are about to do something that has never been done in the history of the galaxy. We are going to make the Council regret ever finding us. Get me everything you can on their weaknesses. Every gap in their technology, every flaw in their tactics. We have 40 days to prepare for a war that might last generations. She opened the door and the noise from outside rushed in. The chaos had not stopped, but Linda no longer saw it as panic. She saw it as energy waiting to be directed. And Kevin, she added as she stepped through the doorway, start building more ships. As many as we can, as fast as we can. The Admiral smiled grimly and nodded. For the first time since the transmission, humanity had a plan. It was desperate and probably impossible, but it was something. The Council had made their demands. Earth was about to give its answer. 6 months had passed since the Council delivered its ultimatum. Earth's official response had been a masterpiece of diplomatic delay. Linda Patterson sent message after message asking for clarification on terms. She requested meetings that took weeks to arrange. She raised concerns about translation errors and cultural misunderstandings. Ambassador Zethrel grew more frustrated with each passing day, but he could not accuse humanity of outright defiance. Behind this wall of paperwork and politeness, humanity worked like it had never worked before. Commander Grace Mitchell stood on the observation deck of Titan Station and watched the greatest construction effort in human history unfold before her eyes. Cargo ships moved in endless streams between Earth and the orbital shipyards. Welding torches flashed like tiny stars against the darkness of space. The sound of metal being shaped echoed through the station's hull day and night. Grace was 30, 8 years old with short black hair and sharp green eyes. She had grown up on a farm in Kansas and had never imagined she would end up commanding humanity's largest military installation, but war had a way of putting people in unexpected places. Production is up another 12% this week, said Lieutenant Danny Reeves as he walked up beside her. He was young, with messy brown hair and grease stains on his uniform that never seemed to wash out. His hands were always moving as if they wanted to take something apart and put it back together better. How many ships now? Grace asked. 187 completed. Another 40 in final assembly. Danny grinned with obvious pride. We figured out how to cut the construction time by a third. The Council builds their ships with precision and elegance. We build ours to work and to survive. Grace nodded, but her expression remained serious. It is still not enough. Not against what they have. No, Danny agreed. But Commander, 6 months ago we had 47 ships. Now we have almost 200. In another 6 months, we could have 500. They have never seen anything grow this fast. Before Grace could respond, her communicator buzzed. Commander Mitchell, you have a visitor arriving from Earth. Priority clearance from the Secretary General's office. Grace frowned. Unannounced visitors usually meant bad news. Who is it? Dr. Elizabeth Harper. She says she has information you need to see immediately. 20 minutes later, Grace sat in her small office across from a woman who looked like she had not slept in a very long time. Elizabeth Harper was one of Earth's most brilliant physicists. Her hair was tangled and her clothes were wrinkled, but her eyes burned with intensity. I apologize for my appearance, Elizabeth said as she spread data files across Grace's desk. I have been working on this for 3 months straight. I had to see you as soon as I was certain. Certain about what? Elizabeth took a deep breath. I cracked their faster-than-light technology. Not how to build it, but how it works. And more importantly, where it fails. She pulled up a holographic display showing the movement patterns of Council ships. Lines of light traced paths between stars, always arriving and departing from the same points. Their drives are incredibly efficient, but they have a limitation. They can only enter and exit faster than light travel at specific locations in each star system. These points are determined by gravitational forces. The Council calls them transit nodes. Grace studied the display, so they can only appear in certain places. Exactly. Their entire military strategy is built around controlling these nodes. Every battle in their history has been fought at predictable locations. Elizabeth's voice grew excited. But our drives are different. We developed them independently, without knowing about the transit nodes. Our technology is cruder and uses more energy, but it can jump anywhere. The meaning of this hit Grace like a physical blow. They cannot predict where we will appear.
Ow.
And it gets better. Elizabeth changed the display to show a Council fleet formation. Their ships are designed to fight at transit nodes. Heavy shields in front, weapons pointing forward, engines in back. They expect enemies to come from specific directions. If something appeared behind them, or beside them, or above them, their formations would fall apart. Grace leaned back in her chair and let out a long breath. This was the first real advantage humanity had found. Not just a way to survive, but a way to actually win. There is more, Elizabeth said, and her expression grew dark. I have been studying Council history. Not just what they have shared with us, but records we obtained through other means. What kind of other means? The Meridian traders are not as loyal to the Council as they pretend. Some of them have been selling us information. Elizabeth pulled up a new file filled with alien text. This is a list of every species that has achieved faster-than-light travel in the last 10,000 years. 47 civilizations. And how many refused the Council's terms? 15. Elizabeth paused. All 15 are gone. Not defeated. Not conquered. Gone. No ruins. No refugees. No records of what happened to them. The Council does not just win wars. They erase entire species from existence. Grace felt cold spread through her chest. She thought about the billions of people on Earth going about their lives. Children playing in parks. Families eating dinner together. All of them trusting that their leaders would protect them. Does the Secretary General know about this? I briefed her this morning. That is why she sent me here. Elizabeth pulled a small data chip from her pocket. She is activating Project Lighthouse. Grace recognized the name. Project Lighthouse was humanity's deepest secret. Over the past 5 years, 12 specially designed ships had carried colonists to hidden worlds far from Council space. If Earth fell, humanity would survive somewhere. How many people are in the colonies now? Almost 2 million across 7 successful settlements. The other 5 ships are still in transit. Elizabeth handed Grace the data chip. This contains the locations of all colonies and the protocols for contacting them. Only a handful of people have this information. Grace took the chip and held it carefully. Such a small thing to carry the future of the human race. We really are going to war, she said quietly. We were always going to war, Elizabeth replied. From the moment they found us, this was inevitable. The Council does not allow rivals to exist. Every species either kneels or dies. Grace stood and walked to the window. Outside, another warship was taking shape in the construction yards. Workers in spacesuits crawled over its hull like ants, building something far larger than themselves. Then we need to make sure we are ready. Not just to fight, but to survive, no matter what happens. That is why the Secretary General sent me. She wants Titan Station to become more than a shipyard. She wants it to become a fortress. Elizabeth joined Grace at the window. The Council will come eventually. When they do, this station needs to hold long enough for our fleet to respond. Grace thought about the people under her command. Engineers and pilots and soldiers who had volunteered knowing they might never see Earth again. They deserved better than to be lambs waiting for slaughter. Tell the Secretary General I understand, Grace said. And tell her that when the Council comes, they will find out what humans do when our backs are against the wall. Elizabeth nodded and gathered her files. At the door, she paused and looked back. Commander, there is one more thing. In all my research, I found references to something the Council fears. Something older than them. They never name it directly, but it influences everything they do. What is it? I do not know yet. But I think whatever it is, that fear is why they are so desperate to control every new species they find. They are not just building an empire. They are building an army. She left without another word. Grace stood alone at the window and watched the ships being built. Somewhere out there in the darkness between stars, something waited. Something that scared even the mighty, Galactic Council. And humanity was caught in the middle. The Council's patience finally ran out on a cold December morning. Admiral Kevin Brooks stood on the bridge of the carrier, relentless, and watched 300 enemy ships appear at the edge of Earth's solar system. They emerged from the transit node exactly where Elizabeth Harper had predicted they would. All stations report ready, said Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake from her position at the tactical console. She was a calm woman with steady hands and a voice that never wavered, even when death was staring her in the face. Kevin nodded and studied the enemy formation on the main display. The Council ships were beautiful in a terrible way. Their hulls gleamed silver and blue. Their weapons glowed with contained energy. Each one was a masterpiece of technology, thousands of years. It's more advanced than anything humanity had built. Against them stood 212 human ships. They were ugly and practical, with thick armor plating and weapons bolted onto every available surface. They looked like tools made for a brutal job. Ambassador Zetherel's transmission cut across all frequencies. His silver-scaled face filled the screen, and his black eyes showed no mercy. Human leadership, your delay tactics have exhausted our patience. Surrender now, and we will honor our original terms. Resist, and you will learn why no species has ever successfully defied the Galactic Council. Kevin muted the transmission before Zethrel could finish his threats. He had heard enough alien arrogance to last a lifetime.
Admiral?
The Secretary General is requesting a conference, Sarah reported. Put her through on my private screen. Linda Patterson's face appeared before him. She looked older than she had 6 months ago. The weight of leading humanity through this crisis had carved deep lines around her eyes and mouth. Kevin, I wanted to speak with you before this begins. I am listening. I know what I am asking you to do. What I am asking all of you to do? Her voice trembled slightly. Whatever happens today, humanity will not forget the people who stood between us and extinction. Kevin felt his throat tighten, but he kept his voice steady. We are not doing this to be remembered, Linda. We are doing it because someone has to. She managed a small, sad smile. That is exactly why we will win. Maybe not today. Maybe not for years. But they have never faced anything like us. No, Kevin agreed. They have not. The conference ended, and Kevin turned to face his bridge crew. Every face showed fear mixed with determination. These were ordinary people who had volunteered for an extraordinary mission. Teachers who had become weapons officers, engineers who had become pilots, farmers who had become soldiers. Kevin activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice would reach every ship in the human formation. All hands, this is Admiral Brooks. Today, we face an enemy that has conquered thousands of worlds. They believe we will break. They believe we will surrender. They believe we are just another primitive species to be crushed under their boots. He paused and let silence fill the channel. They are wrong. Our ancestors faced worse odds and prevailed. At Marathon, a handful of Greeks held back a Persian army. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans bought time for a nation. At Midway, a few pilots changed the course of a war. They did not win because they were stronger. They won because they refused to lose. Kevin looked out the viewport at the distant council fleet. Today we carry that legacy into the stars. Today we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. All ships advanced to engagement range. The human fleet moved forward as one. 200 ships against 300. The odds were bad, but not impossible. The count. Ill fired first. Plasma beams designed to overload shields lanced across space in brilliant streams of blue light. They struck human ships, expecting to cripple them in seconds. The beams hit armor instead of shields. Human ships did not rely on energy barriers that could be overwhelmed. They trusted in thick metal plates that ablated under fire but kept the ships fighting. Damage reports flooded in, but no ships were destroyed. Return fire, Kevin ordered. Human weapons were crude by council standards. Railguns that launched metal slugs at incredible speeds. Missiles packed with nuclear warheads. Laser batteries that burned through enemy shields with brute force rather than elegance. They were also devastatingly effective. Direct hit on the council flagship's port shield generator. Sarah reported with surprise in her voice. Their formation is breaking. Kevin watched the enemy ships scatter and reform. Something was wrong. The council fleet outnumbered them and had superior technology. They should have overwhelmed the human defenses by now. Instead, they were fighting cautiously, almost hesitantly. Admiral, we are detecting new contacts entering the system. Kevin's blood went cold. How many? 2,000 plus. Multiple vectors. They are not using the transit nodes. Sarah's voice cracked. Sir, they are appearing everywhere. The battle froze as both fleets processed what was happening. Ships emerged from empty space all across the solar system. Their designs were unlike anything in any database. Dark angular hulls covered in strange patterns that seemed to move on their own. Weapons that glowed with sickly green light. Zethrel's panicked voice broke through on all frequencies. Council fleets at unknown vessels. You are interfering with a sanctioned enforcement action. Identify yourselves immediately. The response came in a voice that sounded like stones grinding together. We are the collective. We have been watching humanity, waiting. The council's time is ended. What followed was not a battle. It was slaughter. The collective ships tore through the council formation with weapons that ignored shields entirely. Council vessels that had seemed invincible moments ago exploded one after another. Debris spread across space like a metal cloud. Kevin watched in horror as Zethrel's flagship came apart. The ambassador's final scream cut off abruptly as his ship became a ball of fire. Then the collective turned its attention to Earth. Human vessels, the grinding voice announced. You have served your purpose. You were the bait that drew the council to this system. Now you will be harvested. Kevin understood everything in a terrible instant. The collective had used humanity as a trap. They had let Earth believe it was fighting for survival against the council when really both species were being played. All ships emergency jump, he ordered, but the collective had planned perfectly. Their ships moved to block every escape route. Human vessels that tried to flee were cut down before they could engage their drives. Grace Mitchell's voice came through on a static-filled channel from Titan Station. They knew. They always knew. Admiral, they are targeting the station. I am ordering evacuation, but there is not enough time. Grace, get out of there.
Negative.
Someone has to buy time for the shuttles. Her voice was calm and steady. Tell them we did not go quietly. The channel went dead. Kevin closed his eyes as enemy fire struck the Relentless. The ship shuddered, and alarms screamed. Around him, his crew fought to keep systems running, but it was hopeless. His last thought was of Earth hanging blue and beautiful below. 8 billion people who would wake up tomorrow to find their protectors gone and monsters at the door. The betrayal was complete. Humanity had prepared for war against the Council. No one had prepared for what came next. On the surface below, Linda Patterson stood in the emergency bunker and watched the battle unfold on screens that flickered with each impact. She saw the fleet die. She saw Titan Station burn. She saw the collective ships descend toward Earth like a plague of metal locusts. But she did not despair. Even now, hidden colony ships were racing toward distant stars. 4 million humans would survive in secret places the collective had never found. The war was not over. It was just beginning. Earth did not fall in a single day. It took 3 weeks of bombardment and invasion before the collective declared the planet secured. Cities that had stood for centuries became rubble. Oceans boiled where orbital strikes hit the water. The sky turned gray with ash and smoke that blocked out the sun. 8 billion people had lived on Earth before the invasion. When it ended, less than 2 billion remained. The survivors were sorted into work camps and processing centers. The collective did not want slaves. They wanted something far worse. They wanted to absorb human minds into their hive, consciousness. But not everyone was captured. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Secretary General Linda Patterson stood in a bunker that had been built to survive nuclear war. The air was stale, and the lights flickered from damaged power systems. Around her sat the remnants of Earth's leadership. Generals without armies. Scientists without laboratories. Politicians without nations. Project Lighthouse status, Linda said. Her voice was hoarse from days without proper sleep. Dr. Nathan Cole looked up from his cracked tablet. His glasses were held together with tape, and his clothes hung loose on his thin frame. 7 of our 12 colony ships made it out before the blockade. The other 5 were destroyed trying to escape. How many survivors total? Approximately 4 million across all hidden colonies. Out of 8 billion? Linda let the number settle into her mind without letting it break her. Grief was something she could not afford right now. The collective, she continued. What do we know? Elizabeth Harper stepped forward. She had escaped Titan Station on the last shuttle before it was destroyed. The data she carried had cost hundreds of lives to gather. Her hands shook as she activated a holographic display. They are not a single species. They are what happens when assimilation goes wrong. Elizabeth pulled up ancient council records. Thousands of years ago, the council tried to absorb a species called the Veth. Something went wrong during the process. Instead of being controlled, the Veth consciousness took over. It spread to other absorbed species and grew into what we now call the collective. The council created them, Nathan said quietly, and lost control of them. The collective retreated to the outer edges of the galaxy. Everyone thought they were defeated, but they were not defeated. They were growing, planning, waiting for the right moment. Linda studied the map on the display. Collective territory covered thousands of star systems. It was vast beyond imagination. They used us, she said. They knew the council would come to claim Earth. They positioned themselves to take advantage of it. Yes, Elizabeth zoomed in on Earth's location. We were bait. Nothing more. The council fleet that came to conquer us was actually a target. The collective wanted to destroy council forces far from their main territory. General Marcus Taylor spoke up from the corner. He was the highest-ranking military officer to survive the invasion. His uniform was torn and blood-stained, but his eyes were still sharp. So what do we do now? We have no fleet, no weapons, no way to fight back. Linda turned to face him. We have something better. We have survivors who the collective does not know about. We have hidden colonies they have never found, and we have something they cannot understand. What is that? Rage. Linda's voice was cold and hard. Every person in those colonies lost someone. Family, friends, an entire world. That kind of anger does not fade. It burns until it finds an outlet. She walked to the communication console. It was connected to a network of hidden relays that stretched across the galaxy. The system had been designed years ago for exactly this situation. To all surviving human forces, Linda said into the microphone, "This is Secretary General Patterson. Earth has fallen. Our fleet is destroyed. Our cities are burning. Billions of our people are dead or captured." She paused and took a breath. But we are not finished. In the darkness between stars, humanity survives. Our colonies remain hidden. Our people remain free. And our resolve remains unbroken. Her voice grew stronger with each word. The collective believes they have one. They believe humanity is just another species to be absorbed into their hive mind. They are wrong. We are not like the others they have conquered. We do not surrender. We do not forget, and we do not forgive. Linda looked around the bunker at the tired and broken people who had once led. The most powerful nations on Earth, they were watching her with something new in their eyes. Hope. And establishing the human resistance. Every colony, every ship, every person who escaped the invasion. We are one force now, with one purpose: survival. And one day, when we are strong enough, we will return. We will free our people. We will take back our world. And we will make the collective pay for every life they have stolen. She ended the transmission and silence filled the bunker. General Taylor was the first to speak. That was a good speech. But speeches do not win wars. We need weapons, ships, soldiers. We will build them, Linda replied. The colonies have resources. They have people who know how to work. And they have time. How much time? Nathan asked. Elizabeth answered. The collective's hive consciousness is powerful but slow. They think as one mind, which means they process information at a massive scale. Individual decisions take longer for them than for us. It could be years before they realize some humans escaped. Decades before they find the colonies. Then we use those decades. Linda pulled up a map showing the locations of the hidden colonies. Each settlement focuses on a different task. Some build ships. Some train soldiers. Some develop new weapons. We share everything through secure channels. We grow separately, but we fight together. She pointed to the smallest colony on the map. A frozen moon orbiting a dead star in a system with no name. This is where we start. The collective will never look here. It has nothing they want, but it has everything we need. Ice for water, minerals for construction, and darkness to hide in. General Taylor studied the map with new interest. You have been planning this for a long time, since the day the Council first contacted us. I knew something was wrong. Empires do not offer protection out of kindness. They offer it because they are afraid. Linda smiled grimly. I just did not know what they were afraid of until now. She turned off the display and faced her people one final time. We have lost almost everything. Our homes, our families, our world. But we have not lost ourselves. As long as one human remains free, the resistance lives. As long as the resistance lives, there is hope. Outside the bunker, collective ships patrolled the skies. Processing centers worked day and night, absorbing human minds into the hive. The invaders believed their victory was complete. They did not know about the bunker. They did not know about the colonies. They did not know that in the darkest moment of human history, a fire had been lit that would one day burn across the galaxy. Linda Patterson looked at the tired faces around her and saw the future. It would be hard. It would take years. Many of them would not live to see the end, but humanity would endure. It always had, and when the time came, the collective would learn what the Council had feared. Humans did not stay. Beaten for long, 10 years passed in silence. The collective expanded across half of what had been Council space. World after world fell to their hive consciousness. Billions of minds were absorbed and added to the whole. The Council itself was reduced to a handful of fortified systems, where survivors huddled and waited for an end they believed was certain. No one spoke of humans anymore. They were a footnote in galactic history, a primitive species that had briefly resisted before being erased like all the others. The collective had processed Earth, moved on to bigger targets. Then the silence ended. The first attack came without warning. A collective processing facility on a converted moon housed 17 billion absorbed minds. It was one of the largest nodes in their network. One moment it existed, the next moment it was gone. A single ship had appeared from empty space. Not from a transit node. Not from any direction the collective had expected. It moved faster than their sensors could track. It fired weapons that cut through their defenses like they were not there. And then it vanished before any response could reach it. Supreme Coordinator Vextal felt the loss of 17 billion minds like a wound in its own consciousness. For the first time in centuries, the Hive experienced something it had almost forgotten: fear. Analysis. Vextel demanded from its subordinate minds. Unknown vessel. Unknown weapon signatures. Drive technology matches no current database entries. Origin of the attack? Unable to determine, the vessel appeared to emerge from standard space without using any known transit method. More attacks followed over the next months. Shipyards were destroyed. Communication nodes were silenced. Resource extraction facilities vanished in balls of fire. Each strike was surgical and devastating. The collective pulled forces from expansion to defense. But there was no enemy to defend against, just shadows and destruction. Then the message came. It broadcast on every frequency to every collective node across the galaxy. The voice that spoke was calm and cold. "This is Admiral Grace Mitchell of the Human Resistance Fleet." Bextel processed the name with growing horror. Grace Mitchell had died at Titan Station. The collective had confirmed it. They had absorbed witnesses who watched her station burn. For 10 years you have believed humanity destroyed. You were wrong. The transmission included coordinates. A location in deep space where no star burned and no planet turned. Collective sensors found nothing there, but the message continued. We built in the darkness. We learned from our defeats. We remembered every single soul you took from us. Images flooded the transmission. Hidden construction yards buried inside asteroid fields. Training facilities carved into rogue planets drifting between stars. Research stations floating in the empty void between galaxies. Humanity had not just survived. It had transformed into something new. You thought you understood us. You were wrong about that too. We do not break. We adapt. We evolve. And we hold grudges for a very long time. The final image showed a fleet, not the few hundred ships Earth had managed to build before the invasion. Thousands of vessels filled the screen. Each one bristled with weapons the collective had never seen. They hung in formation around a massive structure that defied physics. A mobile shipyard capable of building warships in days instead of months. This is your only warning, Grace concluded. Release every absorbed human in your collective. Withdraw from Earth and all human territory, or face the consequences. Vextal gathered the full might of the collective consciousness. Trillions of minds linked together to coordinate a response that would crush this arrogant remnant once and for all, and felt nothing. The communication nodes were gone. The fleet coordination networks were silent. Across collective space, isolated. Hive nodes found themselves alone for the first time in millennia. Cut off from the guiding consciousness that had given them purpose. The humans had not just announced their return. They had already begun their attack, in a hidden command center on a world the collective had never found. Linda Patterson watched reports stream in from across the galaxy. She was older now. Her hair had turned completely white and deep lines marked her face. But her eyes still burned with the same fire that had kept humanity alive through its darkest decade. Grace Mitchell stood beside her. The commander had not died at Titan Station. She had ejected in an escape pod seconds before the explosion. A resistance ship had picked her up 3 days later, drifting in the debris field. She had spent the next 10 years preparing for this moment. Their coordination is collapsing, Grace reported. Isolated nodes are panicking. They've never had to think for themselves before. It was always going to work, Linda said quietly. They are a hive mind. Take away the hive, and the minds do not know what to do. She turned to face the command center. It was filled with humans from a dozen different colonies, young people who had grown up in hiding, old people who remembered Earth, all of them carrying the memories of a world that had been stolen from them. All forces, Linda announced. Her voice carried across the fleet through secure channels. Begin Operation Homecoming. It is time to take back what is ours. The Resistance fleet moved as one, thousands of ships that had been built in secret over 10 years of patient preparation. They struck collective positions across the galaxy simultaneously. Processing centers were destroyed before they could be reinforced. Absorption facilities were torn apart, and the humans inside were freed. On Earth, the sky lit up with battle for the first time in a decade. Collective ships that had grown lazy from years of unopposed occupation scrambled to respond. But the humans knew every defense position. They had spent 10 years gathering intelligence and planning every angle of attack. Grace commanded the assault from the bridge of the carrier Remembrance. It was named for everyone who had died in the first invasion. Every ship in the fleet carried a similar name: Vengeance, Justice, Hope, names that reminded them why they fought. Collective flagship is trying to retreat, reported her tactical officer. Do not let them, Grace replied. No one escapes. It's not this time. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, every collective ship in Earth orbit was destroyed or disabled. Landing craft descended through the clouds carrying soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Linda Patterson was on the first shuttle to touch down. She stepped onto the soil of Earth for the first time in 10 years and felt tears streaming down her face. The air smelled of smoke and ash. The ground was scarred from a decade of occupation. But it was still home. Around her, freed humans emerged from processing centers. Many of them had been absorbed into the hive mind for years. They blinked in the sunlight like people waking from a long nightmare. Welcome back, Linda said to them. You are free now. You are all free. Grace joined her a few minutes later. The commander looked out at the ruined landscape and the burning collective wreckage. We did it, she said softly. We actually did it. Not yet, Linda pointed at the sky where stars were just becoming visible through the fading smoke. Earth is just the beginning. There are still collective forces across the galaxy, still humans waiting to be freed, still a war to be won. She turned to face Grace with fierce determination. But today, we proved something. We proved that no matter how far we fall, humanity gets back up. We proved that the darkness cannot hold us forever. We proved that the galaxy should never have counted us out. Above them, the Resistance fleet hung in orbit. Protectors where once there had been conquerors. Behind them, freed humans wept, and embraced and remembered what it felt like to have their own thoughts again. The war was not over. But for the first time in 10 years, humanity was winning, and they would never stop until every last human was free.